Hello, my name is James Turner, and for Assignment 3 of the PIDP 3240 course, I have chosen to present a Pecha Kucha on the hydroelectric needs in British Columbia and the Site C Dam project in the Peace River area of northeastern BC. BC Hydro is the third largest electrical utility in Canada and produces power for almost 95% of the BC population. They have 31 hydroelectric generating plants producing between 43 and 54,000 gigawatt hours of electricity each year for use by British Columbians. In 1964, the Columbia River Treaty was developed and ratified by both the US and Canada. Its purpose was to provide sorely needed flood control for the Columbia River Valley, while at the same time providing flow reserves for irrigation and power generation. Between 1974 and 77, the Mica Dam was completed with an underground power plant housing 4 generators, with a combined annual output of 7,200 gigawatt hours. Downstream, the Revelstoke Dam produces another 12,000 gigawatt hours with the same water flow. In northeastern BC, the Bennett Dam was built between 1961 and 68. Its generating station produces another 13,000 gigawatt hours of electricity. Williston Lake is the reservoir behind this dam, and at 1,761 square kilometers, it's the largest freshwater lake in BC. Since 1971, BC's population has grown by 1 to 3% every year. At that rate, we expect to have another million or more people living here than today, all of whom will need their share of electricity to meet the demand for more and more appliances and electronics in homes and workplaces. According to information published by BC Hydro, the average electricity consumption by each BC household as of 2013 was 11,000 kilowatt hours per year, meaning roughly 4 million households rely on hydroelectric sourced power in our province. Utility supply is always in constant need of planning for the future. Forecasted estimates of supply and demand have motivated the designers and engineers at Hydro to brainstorm alternatives and come up with some plans for what to prepare for the years to come. In the decade after the last generator was installed in the Gordon Shrum station at the Bennett Dam, the BC government began to focus on ways to do more with less. The recession was in full swing, and so the public money being spent was being used to stimulate the economy rather than build infrastructure like power stations. In 1989, BC Hydro introduced the Power Smart program in order to reduce the need to expand or replace hydro-generating facilities. Legislation was passed to eliminate inefficient lighting like incandescent lamps and magnetic ballasts, and instead encourage electronic ballasts and LED lighting. This program has used education, rebates, and subsidies to change people's habits and reduce power consumption. Now the focus is on making sure that any new power generation uses methods that protect the environment and produce what is now referred to as green power. As a result of the Public Power Legacy and Heritage Contract Act, BC Hydro is required to work with private power producers. In 2013, BC Hydro had purchase agreements in place covering over 22,000 gigawatt hours of energy annually. One technology used by these private producers is wind technology. GE has announced that it will be supplying 61 turbines for the Meikle Wind Project located outside Tumbler Ridge starting in 2016. This will increase the provincial wind power generation by 38% using a surface area less than 2% of the Site C reservoir for almost 1/6 of the power. Two other methods of power generation are solar and geothermal generating systems. Both of these have environmental issues limiting the amount of power that they can produce. Cloudy days and nighttime darkness limit solar, while geothermal sources need groundwater that is greater than 80 degrees Celsius. While coal-fired generating stations have been used for over 100 years to produce electricity, coal is neither a green energy source nor is it a renewable source. In BC, the only time electricity produced from coal is used is when it's imported from the power grid connections supplying power from Alberta producers. Natural gas coal-fired generating stations have a much smaller role in BC, with a combined generator capacity of only 1,010 megawatts, with locations in Kelly Lake, Nicola, and Vancouver Island. Rather than a producer of power, the LNG industry in BC is far more significant as a consumer of electricity. Over 8,400 acres of Class 1 to 3 farmland currently used for growing crops like canola and providing animal pasture will be lost to the reservoir. Of significant note is that this area is thought to contain the only Class 1 farmland north of Quesnel in BC. The impact of the Site C Dam on native residents and their communities in the area may not be as invasive as that of the Williston Lake Reservoir, but the Federal-Provincial Joint Review stated, "The panel determines that the effect of the project on cultural heritage resources to be adverse and significant." The local climate was altered through the formation of Williston Lake by increasing humidity, lowering ambient temperatures, eliminating plants and trees, and changing the aquatic environment completely. The reduced footprint of Site C will have far less adverse effect on wildlife habitat. The design of Site C will create a reservoir with over 57,000 acres of land being covered in water, an area roughly 5% of the size of Williston Lake. Its hydro output will be 5,100 gigawatt hours of electricity annually, enough to power roughly 450,000 homes. With a life expectancy exceeding 100 years, Site C is set to provide British Columbians with a more green supply of electricity for the future, while providing employment, economic development, and improved service infrastructure. Whether the cultural and wildlife disruption will be worth it in the end, only time will tell.